Now for the videos that a lot of you have been waiting for. Some more on my Locomotive 101 series. Today's locomotives are going to be the GP9 Phase 3, which we've already done, but we're going to compare it to the GP18. The differences. If you look just for a second, you can see a couple differences, and I'll point them out here in a minute as we go along. And as you know, this is a high nose. I also have a low nose GP18 as well, and we'll talk about those differences in a minute. Okay, horsepower wise, we'll talk about the interior differences because that's basically horsepower and stuff, and I'll leave this out so you can kind of look at both the models here. As you know, the GP9 Phase 3, actually all the GP9s, when we're talking interior and horsepower, were 1750 horsepower stock from an EMD 567C engine running at 835 RPMs at full throttle. The GP9 has the newer control stand, the AAR type control stand, as opposed to the GP7, which I've already mentioned before, but I just want to touch on that quickly. The GP18 was introduced in 1959, and it brought 1800 horsepower. This was achieved with a new 16-cylinder 567 D1 engine. The D1 is a non-turbocharged 567 engine producing 1800 horsepower. And I believe how this was achieved was increasing engine RPMs to either 850 or 900 RPMs. I'm not exactly sure on that, but that's basically how the horsepower was increased, was engine RPMs. Same control stand as the GP9. Basically, there's not a lot of differences. There's a few exterior differences, and we'll go over those now. If you look very closely, we'll go back to the GP9. Notice these radiator grills. Oops, won't focus for me. Those. Almost looks like a chicken wire fence. Those and those. And the rooftop fans are kind of curved over. We're on the GP18 model. You'll notice it's a different grill intake. These are Proto 2000 models, and they don't do a real super job at modeling these grills, but you get the general idea. Also notice the fan on the top is different. It's a little bit higher. I'm assuming to help with the added cooling that's needed. And let's go over to the model here. So you can see it. Notice how those are more of a smooth top on the fans. They kind of blend, where these kind of stick way up. And again, high nose. And we'll look at the low nose in a second. Basically, the side of the car body looks pretty much exactly the same as the Phase 3 GP9. The side sill around the fuel tank, etc., etc. And like I mentioned in the GP7 and 9 video back a while ago, Boston and Maine had 6 GP18s, and 5 out of the 6 had the old style fans on the top, so these made them quite unique. and they had one of them with these fans like this on top. And the Boston and Maine ones were actually low nose. Okay, so let's get the low nose into the picture so we can compare that. Okay, here's a shot of the low nose. Prior to the 18 series, EMD only offered these in high nose, as far as I know. When the 18 series came out, they offered a low nose version. And from that point on, the low nose seemed to be more popular than the high nose, as you know, except for NS and Southern, or Norfolk and Western. Sorry, before NS. But anyway, so there's a comparison between those units. The GP18 was not a real popular model. As I mentioned, it was introduced in 1959. It only ran till like 1960 or 61. Also, at the same time, the GP20 was introduced in 1959, and we'll talk more about that in the next video. Again, not a very popular model. The railroads were getting interested in horsepower. The race was on between Elko, GE was now in the game in 1959, although they didn't sell any U-25Bs till like 1961, but they were now part of the road power horsepower war. So, kind of interesting era of time there. A lot of changes and pretty cool stuff if you like first generation locomotives. So, that pretty much wraps up the differences between the GP9 and 18. Not a lot of significant changes, just like I pointed out, minor car body changes and horsepower. Alright, next video we'll look at the GP20 compared to the GP18.